Hi there, and thank you for clicking on this video. This video is in response to a question by user Shadow Sapphire on the Lesion video. Said, can you do a video on the Pupacyst? Just got a Riven for it, and wondering how it competes with the Lesion. Pretty simple question. Wanting to know how a weapon compares. Frankly, if you're using a Riven for it compared to the Lesion, my recommendation on usage is going to be use the Pupacyst as a stat stick. It's got a pretty nice Riven dispo, especially compared to the Lesion. It's a 5-dot dispo, and it's worthy of like a really cheap stat stick Riven. But if you want to use it, let's talk about it, and we'll do a build for it. As normal, we're gonna start with the Nubro build. Then we'll immediately go into the scale build, and then we'll talk about how it compares to the Lesion. The Pupacyst is basically a Corpus destroyer. We'll start with our basic multipliers, damage, get pressure point on, Organ Shatter, and attack speed, crit chance, range, and we're going to have a couple of flex slots, which isn't too bad. So, depending on how you want to mod it, I would highly recommend when using the Pupacyst to only use it against Corpus. Just because of what its stats are, this weapon has a 13% crit chance, 1.5 crit multiplier, 27% status chance. But the good thing about the Pupacyst, like we're going to sell it as good as we can, is that it allows you to have the golden combo against Corpus. You get viral magnetic, and I'll use the 60/60s to show it. So viral magnetic toxin. It gives you the golden combo for burning down Corpus, right? Toxin gives you shield bypass. Viral, because of the health pool that's weak to viral, will also boost the magnetic, or boost the toxin proc when it hits. And normally this is a combo you do not have access to, because toxin is part of viral, right? So toxin, magnetic, viral, this combination even allows you to do decent damage to proto shields. Obviously it's not the ideal type, but because when the toxin procs have to go through proto shields, you actually have to burn through them. There's no bypass. Well, the magnetic will boost it. You would want to tweak the magnetic weighting. Get it a little bit lower because your damage source is essentially the toxin dots itself, but this will give you enough raw damage. Actually, I can't recommend these 60/60s. One of them's a barrow. What am I doing? So something like this, Frost is a little easier to get. So let's see how it performs against 190 Axio Elites. So the big thing is that you have the shield bypass, but at lower levels, shields aren't a big deal yet. So, couple thousand, you can see the headshots do way more. 3K, 4K, and then you get a headshot and it's, 30K, 100K. So about 9K seems to be the average. Yeah, nice little 27K. It's because of the stance on the stance multipliers. I would highly recommend using Shimmering Blight, because this weapon is so low crit. The difference between the damage with, say, Twirling Spire, which is a rare stance mod, is pretty substantial. You can see where it's hitting. It's hitting about shoulder height. And this enables you to get quite a few headshot multipliers. And when you crit on a headshot, or hitting their weak spot, when you crit on it, you get an additional 2x damage increase. So that helps this weapon out a ton. So I would say stick with the Shimmering Blade. It's not the Guandao, where it's got all that crit, where it's not too big of a deal. But with this, and obviously if you don't have Prime Fever Strike, regular Fever Strike, and tone down the magnetic so it's not so overwhelming. But the weapon is very well designed for killing Corpus. Like, this is the golden combination. Viral, magnetic impact, you just have to tweak the weightings. So Toxin stays the highest, which means there is going to be a performance difference against Corpus if you're trying to self-prime with magnetic also. It is going to basically require you to use Prime Fever Strike. Even if you do magnetic with 60s, there's still a decent difference. So way weaker magnetic. Let's bump it up a little bit. Just so we get more status chance. Because we're not running Weeping yet. So 1,000 weight on the Toxin, 281 on magnetic, 319 on viral. So we reduced our damage, but we lean more into viral and Toxin, which is fine, since these guys are mostly health anyway. Yeah, now the viral the viral status is helping us out, where before it had a bunch of competition to proc on a status effect, or as a status effect. So that's actually keeping our damage up, even though we lost quite a bit of raw damage. Alright, let's go over to the combo counter build. So new bros, that's what you're using. Alright, for people that have the combo counter mods, the build is pretty simple. We will be going Blood Rush for that headshot multiplier on the Shimmering Blade. Organ Shatter still a go. Primed Reach. Weeping. Berserker Fury. And again, we're going to be going Fever Strike. And now, because we're going to focus on an enemy to use this weapon to kill with, we're actually going to do a faction mod. Reason being is because this weapon is so heavily dependent against the Corpus on applying a dot, status chance regularly, and making that status chance damage when it triggers the Toxin dot, do as much damage as possible, is really important on this weapon. Because the damage is on a dot, right? So faction mods become more important. On raw damage, you don't get the double dip. I mean, technically, if you're using a primary and use a faction, you got things like 100 munitions, so you don't have to care as much. But on this weapon, it really needs the faction damage. So if you don't have a Prime Smite Corpus, you could do even a regular Smite Corpus, or Boreal's Contempt. If you don't have the primed one, Boreal's Contempt is good as well. And in the third build, we're gonna combine them. But so Smite Corpus, Boreal's Contempt, and then Prime Smite Corpus would be the tier, if you will. If you have Smite Corpus but not the other two, then Smite Corpus is your go-to. If you have Boreal's Contempt and Smite Corpus, you would go Boreal's. But if you have the Prime Smite Corpus and obviously ranked appropriately, you would put that on in order to get like this well-balanced the weapon damage on its own build, right? So now let's see the damage. Now our damage is fully moved over to the Toxin dot. So 1396, 59, 45. All right. 430, 25k. The damage is jumping around because of the headshots. All right. 2300, 5700, 3390, 337, 337, 1400. 1100. Yeah, once it starts climbing, we're still at 4x. Let's go ahead and get our combo built up. 3k, 1300. Yeah, 1500. The weapon's really reliant on headshots to get like way higher numbers. Oh, I had 40 else. Come on, let's do Corpus now. Yeah, the dots are stronger. So 7k, 4k, 21k, 1600. Okay, so we got a low one. 817, 10 and a half, 20k, 27k. Yeah, once you get combo, it pulls ahead. Well, so the final build is actually going to require an arcane. And it's basically going to be taking Boreals and the Smite mod and combining them, which means if you have access to Strike, it would be really beneficial if you're trying to get this to do as much damage as possible. Because against modern Steel Path enemies, this weapon is a little weak. Where the Lesion gets to be more of a general use with the slash weighting. But with Strike, to get as much damage as possible out of it, this would be your build. You have full scaling on the dot. We have hyper fixated on the dot. And you can even go Gladiator Might to help out with the getting the critical chance up as close to 100 as possible. This might be smart. Even though you would lose crit multiplier because we're trying to get headshots, it would end up paying dividends being able to reliably get headshots, even though there is a slight critical multiplier hit. So, no attack speed on the build, attack speed on the frame. If you don't have Strike, then attack speed goes here. And let's actually bring in an Optio. And we'll smack that guy in order to get our combo up. One hit in the center. And then we'll hit and then we'll hit the elites. Alright, 12x, 10k, 14k, 5k, 4800, 17k, 2800, 13k, 2k. Raw damage is 2300, 29k, 13k. It's about the same. And of course the headshot, right? So the second part of so this would be your build. And it's just gonna do what it's gonna do. It's gonna be really strong against the Corpus. You're not gonna have to worry about the weighting too much with things like the Panzer or anything like that. If you prime this weapon, like you prime with a pistol, or a secondary, sorry, this will do significantly more damage, because one of the downsides is, like we talked about with the Ambassador, is this weapon just doesn't have the status pool to pull from. You've got Impact, Toxin, which we modded for, and Viral. So you're not dealing with like a viral status like on the Plague Saws, where it's IPS and then Viral. So we've modded for one of the stats. So say like the Plague Creep Path or the Kiwar, the number of statuses you can pull from to influence condition overload is smaller if you're just trying to auto on its own. But if you prime, it will increase the damage substantially. Though you would lose the bonus effectiveness of having Viral on something else, because the Pupacyst forces you to carry Viral. But for running around and smacking Corpus, this is a really good weapon for it. Really, really good. Okay, so the second part of Shadow Sapphire's question was, how does it compare with the Lesion? It is weaker across everything. Like, if you were to compare unmodded to unmodded, let me actually just pull that up. Pupacyst has more base damage. Alright, so the Lesion has higher crit chance, better crit multiplier, better status chance, has all of the IPS, so impact, puncture, slash, and doesn't have Viral, and is lower base damage, right? Everything else is lower as well. So like the heavy attack damage, slam attack, radial attack, slam attack, the entire thing, slide attack, and it has a higher attack speed, and it has the passive for Toxin. So where would this slot in? Well, it depends on what you're using it for. The Pupacyst is a little bit earlier if I don't. Yeah, the Lesion is MR9. The Pupacyst is MR7. As much as that matters, but just the Pupacyst, I would say, could potentially easily come ahead in a general build with nothing else considered against the Corpus only. Because it's pure impact and Viral. Just having those two stats alone is going to increase your damage against Corpus substantially. You would need to add Toxin, though, to buff it a ton and to make it more effective against the Corpus, but the Pupacyst is very, very strong against Corpus only. Now, you can get... There's a pretty respectable gas damage build on the Pupacyst because you can do gas Viral. Gas Viral or electric, actually, which is pretty good. You run two 60/60s for gas and then like a 90 for electric for a fully boosted dot build against the infested. But it's kind of a coping build. There's other weapons that kill infested better, right? So the Lesion, in terms of overall utility for general enemies, is the stronger weapon. It's not even close. Just based on the regular stats. Crit chance, crit multiplier, status chance, it's 27% versus sky high 37%. And it's slash weighted. And Viral, because of things just in Modern Warframe, like having a Panzer or using primers the way that we are, it's too easy to get Viral on something to really give any thought to having a heavily, like a viral, like thinking Viral on a weapon innately is a big deal, just because of how easy it is to get Viral on stuff nowadays. So it's not a deal breaker having Viral on the weapon itself, unless you want to do the Toxin Viral combination. That being said, the Lesion is going to do way better against every other faction. The Pupacyst might come out a little bit in terms of raw damage against Corpus, just because it doesn't have puncture slash on it. It'll have a better modded benefit against, Corpus weaknesses. But with modding, the damage almost disappears. And you're trying to get Toxin onto Corpus. And the fact is that the bonus on the status chance application from the Lesion gives you additional toxin damage. So I would have to give it to the Lesion in terms of overall utility. Like, if you're a free-to-play player, which one are you putting your Forma into? You're putting it clearly into the Lesion. If you want to go between which one. That being said, in terms of a Riven, the Pupacyst wins out. And it ain't even close. As a stat stick, the Lesion is like lower percentage. What is it? 0.8? Yeah, 0.8. And the Pupacyst is a 1.35. Like, there is a clear answer on which one you use as a stat stick. If you were looking for a stat stick, you wouldn't even pay attention to the Lesion. That's not even on the radar for a stat stick. But that Pupacyst Riven, though, that could be like a really cheap stat stick Riven. It's barely, 5 dot dispo at 1.35. But listen, 5 dots is 5 dots. It's clearly better than a 2 dot, right? So yeah, for that, if you're doing like a stat stick, which is what I would recommend you turn it into, because it isn't until you get like way higher up that there would be a difference. So say if you got like let me see, I can pull up the Riven dispos. Like an Amphis, an Acuros, or an Ether Dagger, Dual Skana, Dark Sword, Plasma Sword, those guys. Where the dispo was way higher. And even then, it would have to be a cheap upgrade for you if you have a Pupacyst Riven. So you have 5 dot dispo, 1.5. Pupacyst is... This is the bottom, the torpedo. And the Pupacyst is right here. Now, obviously, this is just a big list, but you can see it's sort of generally middle of the pack because there aren't too many weapons that are like really high up there where it's like it really matters that they're that amount, where it's like 1.45, 1.5. Like, that's an insane Riven disposition. So you would have to upgrade to this, and if you already have the Pupacyst Riven, man, you might as well just make that into a stat stick. So that's my recommendation on the difference of them. Just to go over it again, because I think this question was implied around being used with Saren. Generally, when you're trying to use Saren and you're trying to use the Toxic Lash, if it wasn't Modern Warframe, there could be an argument for, say, having Viral on the weapon and then using Toxic Lash as like your damage source and using the weapon to sort of prime Toxic Lash. But the fact is, with Toxic Lash, you want as much Toxin Dot as possible to get as much scaling, and then you prime the weapon to increase the Toxin Dot as much as possible. So the Lesion wins out again because the bonus on it is plus 100%, not like as a mod, not as like a scaling of what the Toxin Dot is on it. So with a Riven, with primed Fever Strike giving you 165, and the plus 100%, which would count as like another mod, so for 265, and then a Riven, you could have like over a plus 300% toxin weighting on that, which would absolutely jack up Toxic Lash damage. I don't think there would be any comparison if you're trying to do a Toxic Lash build. It would immediately, if you had a Riven for the Lesion plus Fever Strike, it would immediately be level cap capable against Corpus. The only thing you would have to care about would be Proto Shields. As rare as those are, so like good luck killing a treasure, but then you just prime it for magnetic, right? So that's about as in terms of that interaction. That's about as much as I can talk about with it because it's just the plus 100% and like interacting with all other things. It it matters, and the only real downside is just in terms of like easy use of like when using the Lesion is if you're trying to do like some sort of build on it, you have to remember that on the Lesion, the toxin bonus, increased toxin damage, it's plus 100%, and it does combine with mods. So if you run corrosive on here, right? So you run something like this, it's just going to increase the weighting of the toxin. So the corrosive is going to increase because toxin is already on here. It counts as a mod, and that's probably the biggest thing that you need to know about it. But the Lesion just has so much more damage, even though it does have a little bit less raw damage. It is massively outweighed by the benefits. Maybe there could be more to talk about if the Lesion had like half the base damage, but that just ain't the case. Considering we're in the condition overload meta, with like the combo counter build, puncture and slash, puncture and slash being on here, and then you actually want slash damage. Just the flexibility of the enemy and the extra procs for condition overload just completely make up for it and allow the Lesion to get ahead. And it has a higher attack speed plus the passive, right? So for general use, I think the Lesion just clearly wins. Even if you're doing like a Toxic Lash build, good lord, it's not even close. But that being said, if you're doing a stat stick, that Pupacyst wins clearly, and it ain't even close. So that's my sale on the Pupacyst is use the Lesion. But if you get a Riven, the Pupacyst wins. That's a 5-dot dispo. Even though it's one of the lower ones, still, it's the Lesion you wouldn't even use for a stat stick because the weapon's popular enough. So that's my advice. Congrats on your potential god roll. Happy rolls, dude. Anyway, have a blessed day, guys. Gonna keep this video somewhat short. But yeah, have a good day, guys. Have a blessed day. Take it easy.